Okay, hi. Thanks for having me back. I am Jessie Rymph. I work at Salesforce.org. I've been there for 4 years. Before that, I was a nonprofit Salesforce admin. I was at a university as an admin, and then I was at a corporation for a little while. And I used to be the nonprofit user group leader in Seattle, and that's where I live. And I'll share my blog in the chat. So this is a blog where I used to blog with other people who lived in Seattle, and then it just ended up being me. So I write about flow most of the time because I love flow. So I am excited to be here to talk to you about the workflow to flow transition. Okay, great. So we are talking today about the Migrate to Flow tool. And so I grabbed this from the documentation, which is at the, Gordon, can you mute yourself and drop the links from the bottom of the slide into the chat, please. So this is from the documentation on the Migrate to Flow tool. So this is we're going to look at, and it's going to take your workflows and make them into flows magically. So they have this so far for flow. They don't have, or sorry, for workflow. They don't have it for process builder yet. So it supports a lot of things. Field-based criteria, field updates, email alerts, outbound messages. I don't even really know what those are. Some developer thing, outbound messages, right? Time-dependent workflow actions. We'll see how that works. So rule criteria formula set to true. Cool. So other things. So what it does not support, a big thing over here is tasks. When you use a workflow to create a task for someone, it just doesn't work. So we are going to look at how to recreate that in Flow. So we're going to see what it does and then make a task, because you're going to have to make all of those tasks on your own. All right, there's lots of other things here that it doesn't support, but they are, I mean, hopefully you won't run into this too much if you're still using workflows. Okay, so now I will share my screen. So here is my workflow rule, and this is my menu. Okay, here we go. So the premise here of this workflow rule is that our major donor has died, and we're going to mark them as deceased. And we're going, when we mark them as deceased and they have a total household gifts of over $20,000, then we are going to make a task for us to follow up on their planned giving. We are going to send an email to a florist that has our order for sympathy flowers. I'm assuming we have an ongoing relationship with the florist. We just send them an email. I just threw in a lightning template email that has nothing to do with this little story, just to test it out. This one is a classic template. And we're going to update the do not call and do not email fields. All right, I also have 30 days after rule trigger date. So these are my time-dependent workflow actions. I've got a task, follow up again on the planned giving, and another email alert for the planned giving. So you gotta, be respectful, but get that money. So here we go. Sandy is our person. Oops, I have to bring her back to life again. Okay. Wait, I think I refreshed all of this on a different window. Okay, there we go. Okay, so Dr. Sandy Jones, our major donor who has given us a ton of money. Thank you, Dr. Jones. So we find out that she is now deceased. And so I'm going to mark her deceased. Let me make sure my workflow is active. Okay, cool. All right. Great. Okay, so I've got my fields were changed here, and I have my follow up with planned giving task. And then when I go into my workflow, time-based workflow, and search, these are Yeah, okay. I just created this task for myself for planned giving follow-up. This one I made. This one I made when Sandy Jones died yesterday. Okay, so that's where I can find my time-based workflow actions. Now I'm going to go back into my workflow. And I have this helpful tool at the top, migrate your workflow rules to Flow. And I'm going to start with this workflow I just showed you. So I'm going to click over here, migrate to Flow. Aha! We can't migrate it because it contains a task. So I created another version, I think, that doesn't have the tasks in it. Let's see. So we're going to have to recreate those tasks on our own. Okay, cool. This one, I took the tasks out of it. So let's migrate this one. So step one, you'll want to, before you delete your tasks, take a screenshot or write down what the tasks are. No, don't just delete them, so you can see what you're going to be migrating to your flow. Now let me find that one. Test workflow. Okay. Here you can see I have already tried to migrate it once. Okay, we're going to do it again. Migrate to flow. Oh, Jessica has a good idea. Maybe in Sandbox, clone the workflow first, then remove the task from the clone one, then migrate that one. Excellent idea. All right, that's all it takes. Let's open this or test it in Flow Builder to see what it looks like. Excuse me. Okay, we have two paths here. Oh, let's look at start. So a record is created or updated, and it has my conditions here. Deceased equals true, and total household gifts greater than 2,000. And it's optimizing the flow for actions and related records. Now, because I had time-dependent workflow actions, this is using the scheduled path on the flow, and it has a run immediately path. So let's start with looking at our run immediately path. First thing it's going to do is update these records for me. So this is really, cool, basic. Contact email. It's going to send my email via an email alert. Okay, but it's taking a second to think about it. Okay, whoa. Okay, edit email with force. Yeah, so only thing I had in there, record ID. Okay. Let's see, what does that email template look like? So that was my email alert for email florist with order. Here we go. Let's look at my email template. So I had these fields built into my email, and we'll test this and see if it's all working as we expected. Then on my scheduled path, I have my email alert that's going to go out 30 days later. And again, it's just passing the record ID. This is the ID of the $ record is the ID of the record that's triggering the flow. So that's going to be the contact record that we changed. Okay, so let's save this and activate it and see how this one works. Okay, so let's uncheck here. And email opt-out was up here somewhere. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, and Cool. So let me see. I'm mostly interested in what the emails look like. So let me find them. Okay, cool. So here is my order email that went to my florist shop. That looks great. Let's open our other email with a lightning template. And that looks great too. Again, totally random email, not related at all to our little story. But that looks great. And so it's just pulling in, even though it just says record ID, it's pulling in those fields. So it's all looks like it's working really well. I have on this email, I'm pulling in two different, I know it looks wonky because I don't have the HTML set up right. It's pulling in the contact information and it's pulling in user information. So it's got two different objects on there. So I think the one thing that we need to do is create our task. So, or the tasks that we had to get rid of. So let's look at how we'll do that. So let's look at our workflow rules and tasks. We can look at that there. Okay, I had a couple here. Follow up on planned giving is my task. And I'm gonna split my screen here. Okay, cool. Now in my flow, so I'm just gonna show you how to recreate that task in Flow if that is something you are not familiar with doing. Okay, so I'm in, what am I in? I'm in auto layout. So that means I'm going to click here to add my next task. This is the task that's supposed to be created that day. So I'm going to click here to add my element. If I was in freeform mode, I would just pull my element over to the canvas. So either way, we want to create records. We're going to create a task. And we want to create one task. And we're going to, in this case, use separate resources and literal values because we don't have all of our variables stored in a record variable. So I'm going to tell this to create a task. And now we're going to populate our fields here. So activity date, so for our rule trigger date plus 5 days, to do that here, you have to add a formula. Okay, so I'm going to go to new resource, formula, and I'm going to call this 5 days later. And my data type is going to be a date. So I'm going to just use this today formula, today parentheses plus 5. So that's one way to do it. If you have a field on your contact record, on your record that's triggering the flow, and you want your task based on that date, you can pull in values from your triggering record, your contact, by going down in your resources here to global variables and looking for $contact. And in there, you could pull in any date fields that would be relevant to when this date is created. So if we find out, we're tracking, they actually died on Tuesday, we could say 5 days after the date of death or something like that, rather than, sorry, this is a morbid presentation. But that's what you do for that. Another option is to grab instead of using today, another place today's date is stored is here under flow. You could grab current date and make that plus 5. So that is how we make that a date formula for your tasks. Excuse me. Okay, we need our subject. Or let's see, let's go in order here. Create a date, that'll populate for you. Description, we can type, you can just go ahead and type in here what you want. Or whatever you want. You can type it in there. That's one option. Or you could create a new resource, a resource type of text template. And this isn't necessary unless you want some formatting. You can try some formatting here. See if this works. We could put in some. Okay. Do that. Now, what's next? Description. Owner ID. Who is this going to be owned by? So I want to assign this to the user who checked the box and updated or made the flow run. So I'm going to go to, in my global variables, user, and put in just ID. Okay, so that's how I'm getting the ID of the user that I want this assigned to. Let's say I was going to assign this to my development director. What would I do? Would I, option one, find their ID and hard code it in here? Just paste it right in there. That's who I wanted to assign to. Would I do that? Or would I do a get records element to look them up so I can reuse this flow in my sandbox and in production? Obviously, I would do option two. I would use a get records to look, okay, sorry, I'm getting off track, but just want to help you out. So if you paste in the ID of the user you want this assigned to, this is going to break when you move it to production, right? I'm assuming you are currently working in your sandbox and you want to move this to production. So if when I paste in that ID, that isn't going to work. So I will show you how to do that in just a sec, how to grab another user's ID through Flow. And I think, so we're not able to just look them up. We're not able to say, unfortunately, assign it to this user. That would be awesome. What it's doing here is we have to have a value. So we'll look at how to do that in just a sec. For now, I want to assign this to my current user. Okay. All right, let's check back over here on our existing workflow to see what else we're missing. Status and priority. So if we don't have these required fields, the flow just breaks. It doesn't tell us very helpfully what it needs here. So one thing it does do that's helpful is it gives us our pick list values for our for any field on the flow on the object that is a pick list. And priority is another one like that. Okay. Where are you? Priority is a pick list, so I'm going to set this to normal. Now, if I left this flow as is, what is it going to do? It's going to create an activity, it's going to assign it to the user, but it's not going to be attached to anything. So we need to attach this to our contact. And this would be the who ID. So my who ID is the name of the field where we're attaching it to the contact. So in that case, I'm going again to global variables, my record, $record, and ID. You can just type it in, should be fine. Okay. All right, so what else do we need? We need a subject. Subject is a really short one, so I wouldn't bother with a text template. You can just type it in here. This is follow-up on planned giving. You can use a text template again if you want to have any merge fields in there or do anything fancy with it. All right, let's say, because this is about our planned giving, we also want to relate it to an opportunity. We could use our what ID to connect it to something else, but we'd have to look up somewhere else in the flow which opportunity it is we want to connect it to. All right, so we're not going to do that. Okay, I think that's everything over here from my workflow. So let me make this a bit bigger and we'll hit done. Whoops, we get rid of that last one. And we will error out if we don't have all the right fields, so we can come back and fix that. So let's say instead we're wanting to always assign this task to a particular user. What we want to do is have our user, this is the wrong org. Sorry, I'm in this org. Okay, we want to make sure we are assigning it to a user based on criteria that we can look up on the user record. So we're not going to paste in their ID. We're going to say we always want it to go to the person who has a title of development director in this case. So I'm going to find someone here and change their title to development director. So, oops. If you make sure that this is true for your sandbox and in your production, and you keep titles up to date, it might be that you want to create a custom field on here. Let's say the development director gets promoted, but it should still go to her. I don't know. You want to think of some criteria that can be reusable. So this works in multiple versions of your org. So then I would go in here. To do this, I'm going to do a get records element, dragging that on here. I'm going to get my object as user. So I'm looking up the user record so I can get the ID for my development director. Cool. Now I'm going to say title equals, and I'm just going to type in development director. To make it even more fancy or more proper, what I would do would be create a new resource here and make this a variable that's called, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this, I'm going to do this the right way. So this is the title. This flow will look up a user with this title on their user record and assign the task to them. Data type is text. And here I'm going to put in my default value of development director. Okay, cool. So let's talk about why would I do it that way? Why would I put it in a variable? Well, I'm going to, oops, sorry, did I do everything I needed to do here? I think so. Only store the first record, store all the fields. So what this is going to do, I deleted the line here connecting to my task by clicking on it and hitting the delete button on my keyboard. First, I'm going to get the development director's user record. Then I'm going to create the task over here. So I'm going to reassign my owner to the user from get development director, and then I'm going to put in ID. Okay, I can just hit enter. All right. So now my user record is I'm going to look up the user, and then I'm going to assign this task to the right person. So why do I use that variable? Well, I need to add another task over here to let the development director to assign it to them in 30 days again. So I'm going to clone this. That's one option. Or, so that is, let's clone it. Cool. And I want to change this to be, I could change a formula, make some changes there. But let's say I want to reuse this flow. I really like that I have this task, these tasks here in this get records element. Ooh, I know, we need to put the get records over here as well. Because if it takes this path, it's not going to know who the development director is. Goodness. So I could clone this as well. And put it in this path. Okay, the whole point of the variable is the development director gets promoted. Instead of having to find all the places where I typed in development director, if I had typed it in here or typed it in here, if I go to my variable title of appropriate user, I could just change it in one place. So this would be development director, development vice president of development. If I had changed that on his or her user record, whoops, development, whatever. So I could just change the variable in one place instead of having to find wherever I was using it in Flow. That is why I'm using a variable in two places. Okay, so I think I have talked a really long time about this. Let's save it and see how it works. Well, so I'm going to save it and activate it. Oh, I forgot to show you one thing that's cool in the Flow in here. So when I said migrate to Flow, I could debug it or test it, and then I can also switch the activations. But I'm going to close it because I didn't do that in the right. I'm going to go back and deactivate it over here, I think. Oh, nope, it deactivated it. Okay, cool. What about my other one? Or no, that one wasn't active. To do plan giving, deactivate. Okay. So, oh, little sad face. Okay. Make sure it's deactivated. Okay, cool. Now we can try it again. I have these tasks on here. I'm not going to take the time to, well, let's see. Okay. Okay, cool. See if I get some more tasks. Okay, email opt-out, do not call. More tasks were created for me. So this one was assigned to Gabriel Silva, who we looked up based on title of development director. And let me check my emails, make sure those still look as good as they did before. Yep, my classic email template looks the same. And let me see my lightning email template. Oh, I didn't have that on the test workflow, so I didn't test that. Okay, so I think that is all. Oh, sorry, one other thing I wanted to share with you is when these emails are being sent out, like we've sent out our email to the flower shop, you can see here we don't have any record of how the flowers were ever ordered. So no record here from the flow or from the workflow that we sent that email. How much more time do I have, you guys?
How much time do you need, Gordon?
maybe like another minute or two.
Yeah.
I have about a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Great, thank you. So I just figured out this week how to log an email that was sent through Flow. So how we can record that this email was sent out in our Flow. So I'm going to share this blog post with you in the chat. And this is 2 elements you're going to add to your flow that are going to help you record that this email was sent. So one thing we can do is create a task. We can create another task that is stored on our activity timeline that just says completed task. We emailed the florist. Or you can create an email message that's going to be stored on the email or in the activity timeline as an email. One thing this doesn't do is it's not going to grab the email template from the email alert. So you will have to copy that and put it into the email body, which I need to explain on here. So, excuse me. So this is going to be just what you would follow to track in your activity log that you've sent an email. And that's it. Let me know if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Jessie. I have a quick question on that migrate to workflow from workflow rule to flow.
Mm-hmm.
Is the best practice, or is there even the capability to do bulk, or is it like they make you go through it one at a time?
Oh, great question. It looks like it can do bulk. I don't know. That's a great question though. I haven't tried it.
Yeah. I haven't messed around with this one too much, but I would say, depending on your number of workflow rules, you might not want to do bulk. Otherwise, you're just going to get completely confused as to like what gets migrated and what doesn't. And it's better to just like step through it. And also you take it as a chance to clean up your org, right? You might come across workflow rules that for whatever reason was put in place 2 years ago or even 6 months ago, and no one even uses them anymore. So, don't take up space trying to clean it up in flow if for whatever reason the workflow rule doesn't even apply to your business operations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any questions in the chat? Patricia, your hand's up. I don't know if that's just from earlier or if you actually still had a question for this long. Oh,
are there limitations
from earlier, but I put it in the chat.
Okay.
Are there limitations in migrating email alerts from Classic to Lightning? So yes, and this is something I tried to test out before this call, but I'm not sure how well Flow works with Lightning templates. I would, if you're moving your templates from Classic, I would put them into, well, one option would be to build them in Flow as text templates. And if you do that, they can grab all sorts of objects. You can grab lots of objects in there to go into your template. So unfortunately, I don't know where things are right now because Flow and email capabilities are changing all the time. So if it's a more complex email with lots of objects referenced, build it in your Flow as a text template and send it from there. But if you need to reuse the template outside of the Flow, start with Lightning templates. And your format for your objects is going to be, your format for your merge fields is going to be different too. So that's annoying. So it's not going to be easy if you're changing the format of the templates. Yeah.
Jesse, you've got 2 other questions in the chat.
Okay, great. Timeline for increasing the number of workflow rules that can be migrated using this beta test tool. I don't know, Don. I am sorry. I know that it doesn't work for Process Builder yet. What would happen if our org somehow had 2 users with the same title of development director? Yeah. So in my get records, I have it says I've limited that to just pulling one record, and I can say how I want to sort that. So if I want it, if that's fine with me, I just want it to pick one who's been there the longest or something like that. I could do that. Otherwise, it's just going to pick one. And I don't know what the criteria is going to be. It's like going to be last name or something like that. So yeah, if you have the same, one person with this, 2 people with the same title, it's going to pick one. I think it's always going to be the same one, but I don't know how you I'm not sure. You'll have to guess. Pick only an active user. Great point. That's a great, Alan said to pick only an active user. Also a really good point. Yeah, there's a lot more criteria you could build in there to really safeguard it. And you could create your own criteria. You could make a checkbox on the user that says, this is the user who's going to get the emails about planned giving. So something like that. So yeah, you can make the criteria very specific and just for this case. It's just the point of it is to have it not break across different orgs. And yeah, just also another thought would be to the part of the flow that looks up a user and creates a task and assigns it to them. You could make that a subflow and nah, wait a minute, thinking. I don't know about that. I want it to be reusable, but I'm not sure if a subflow is the right way to do that. Yes, you could make it a subflow and send variables to it so you don't have to rebuild it every time. Okay, anyway. Yay, thanks.
Topic for another time, Jessie. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank
sure.
you.
Jessica, I'll pass it over to you. I think we've got, we're kind of at time, but I think we can go over a little bit. It's okay, because we've got a couple of use cases that we want to just walk through.
No problem.
No worries.
I'll try to go through this as quickly as possible. But we wanted to show some cool flow use cases. So I have gotten permission from one of my clients to show 2 functionalities that I have built for them that I think would be kind of snazzy to see for the group. My client is Consortium for Children, CFC. They provide mediation for families, their children, and prospective permanent families. So this mediation, not medication services, happens when, reunification efforts between the family and their children are not successful and before those parents' parental rights are terminated. So they try to kind of mediate that process. So CFC has coordinators. Those are actual CFC staff. And so they're assigned to cases, and they have mediators, which are kind of, I believe, contractors or something like that. They spend time on these cases, mediating, traveling, etc. So they need to log the time that they've spent so they can be paid for that time. There's essentially kind of like billing CFC for that time. So the first scenario that we wanted to solve for was they wanted coordinators to be automatically assigned to cases so that they could lessen the time it would take between intake and assignment. Because before they were kind of just like, okay, case is ready, and they maybe have like a sheet of their coordinators on the side, and they're just kind of assigning them that way based on whatever's in their head. So each coordinator has a certain case capacity that they can't exceed. And the assignment of the case should be based on the coordinator with the least recent assignment, so like the earliest assignment, unless there's a language need. So for example, if a family member only speaks Spanish, then prioritize assigning a coordinator that speaks Spanish to them. So this is kind of essentially a round robin common scenario in sales. So how do we accommodate a situation like this in Salesforce? Let me do a new share. I'm going into their sandbox. So just to show you, I've got 3 coordinators. Those are contact records in here. That's how they had just set up their coordinators. They weren't user records. And I have some fields to count their case capacity. There's a field that counts the active cases they're assigned to. I'm using DLRS to roll this up. I'm tracking the last case that they were assigned to, the date, time, and I'm tracking their language here. So the way this works is if we go over to a case, and let's say I want to assign this Test Johnny case, this is ready to go out, but someone speaks Spanish here. So even though Mary was the most recently assigned, she should be the one that gets the case. So it's designed to kick off when we hit a certain status. That says keep to sign. If I save, it's assigned to Mary coordinator now. It timestamps the date and time it was assigned, and Mary is now at capacity with that timestamp. And then if I were just to go down the line here, the next one I should see is George, because he was assigned all the way back there and there's no special language need. So that's what's assigned here. And then I'm going to do one last one. That should be Marcia. So now everyone's at capacity. So if I assign this last case, it shouldn't go anywhere. And then there's a whole process, outside of that that's been developed to handle what happens in that case. So how it kind of comes together when it comes into flow, I'm taking into account a lot of different criteria here, so yours might not be as complex. I'm basically grabbing all the coordinator contacts. I'm assigning a count of the available coordinators. I'm making a decision here. If there's no available coordinators, then we just timestamp when this case was queued. Otherwise, I'm doing a check if the case has a non-English speaker. That goes into subflow because it was kind of crazy to try to keep that logic in here. And then I am sorting through the collection of coordinator contacts. I'm using the collection sort because you can sort a collection. And in this case, I'm doing it by the coordinator with the least recent case here. And I'm only picking the first one. So I'll show you how that looks. And that still outputs a collection. So if anyone knows how to just get a single variable out of that, I'd love to know, but I had to do a wacky thing where I kind of just loop through the one thing and assign the variable. And then it kind of takes care of the rest with assigning that coordinator and timestamping the contact record. So if anyone wants to kind of go through this in more detail, they have a similar use case, happy to talk to them. There's a lot going on here, so not enough time to really go in detail. So that is that one. Next share is there a question in the chat?
Jessie says, what's the blue text on the flow that says sort by least recent? Or did you already answer that?
It's a connection. So there's just some logic to kind of handle different, basically I wanted to get one collection variable in the end. So I was like assigning different collections this one variable. So it's just now connecting back to this step.
It was like at the end of each path, like where it stopped, it had a little like bit of blue. I can't see your screen.
Yeah,
duh. Oh, sorry. That's probably because these are connected
guys,
to different steps. So if I were to unauto layout it, these are just connected to different steps.
Oh, okay.
They just don't like show up nicely in the auto.
Okay, I'm always in freeform, so I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
Here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
But if you click on them, they take you straight to the other.
They take you. They can see that.
Yeah, I don't like that as much. I do like the freeform, but I also get the auto for the good alignment.
I need the auto so I can have like right angles.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Was there anything else in the chat?
No, that's it.
Okay. So scenario 2. So they need a streamlined way, an easy way for their coordinators to approve and reject time entries that are submitted by mediators. So they just kind of need to be able to like kind of in a spreadsheet, actually just almost like a spreadsheet because that was what they were working with, just say rejected, not rejected, here's my comments, etc. And then notify the coordinator or the mediator that there is an issue. So share my screen again. So I'm in a custom object that's called timesheet log for PPM case. So there's basically a timesheet for every month. And the mediators submit their time into a custom record called time entries. And what you're seeing here is a screen flow. It's embedded in the Lightning page. And I'm using an unofficial SF component called data table. So unofficial SF is just kind of this like repository of like free kind of flow components that you can download and augment your flows. So this data table is a really cool one because it's kind of like list views, but better, and you can do really robust things because, it's in flow. So you can grab a bunch of data from different places and basically show it in a list view and take actions on it. So, you can see that a lot of time can be submitted for a case. So it would be kind of hard to one by one go through this like in normal Salesforce. And there's custom buttons in this flow. And that is also another thing from unofficial SF. I think it comes with one of the components you would download anyway if you get the data table. But if you want better buttons than what you get now, like multiple buttons, which kind of take you down different decision paths, this is something you can use. So they probably requested more buttons than, there's a lot of buttons here. Yours might be simpler, but if everything but a couple things is approved, it's really easy just to select everything and then just say approve. And that's going to approve all of these time entries like you're seeing here. And then if some of them are problematic, I can, inline edit the status and write some comments here. And I can save those edits. And then I can, notify the mediator that there's an issue. And that shoots out an email, which I don't actually know where that email goes. I think it goes to one of my inboxes. But let's say if, these are all approved now, we can finalize the timesheet. Of course, in my demo, I'm getting an error, but it would have just gone to kind of like a read-only view. So there wouldn't be any opportunity to kind of edit those time entries and whatnot, because once it's approved, you shouldn't be messing with it anymore. So behind the scenes, this flow looks a little crazy, and it's only because I'm kind of accounting for like the 7,000 different scenarios that could happen, and I'm doing a lot of error checking along the way. But because we have like 4 or 5 different buttons, there's at least that many decision paths to go through for each button, as well as checking if the thing was approved or not. But a thing I just wanted to show you that's probably a little more interesting is how that data table actually looks when you put it together. So it is a component. It's under custom here. So you drag and drop it. And you essentially, you select the object that you want to display, and the collection variable of that. And then you can configure the columns that you want. So it's kind of the fields. The fields of that object, you kind of just drag them over. And you can rename the columns if you want to. You can allow inline edit for some columns, not others. And then there's a whole bunch of other properties that you can set about this table, like you can only select one row at a time. No, don't select any rows, hide certain buttons and whatnot. And then that button bar that I showed you, where you get all the different kinds of buttons. This is what it looks like. Again, it's another custom component you can drag and drop, but you can add different buttons with a label and then an underlying value with different colors. And then when you build your decision element, you can check the button bar value. So that's kind of like the API name essentially, and reference that and then kind of direct where the flow goes. So a simple case is if it's approved, I'm looping through, the selected table rows, assigning the approval status, and then just updating it. So data table is something I've been using a lot of, hoping that, one day flow will get there, but it is a super useful component. And I have links in the slide deck if people want to see and explore unofficial SF in those components.
Jessica, I don't know how you just like drop that in the middle of your presentation, but I feel like we could do a whole session just on like the data table thing, because I don't know about anyone else, but I was dreaming about getting everyone off Excel using that whole thing.
Yes. Yeah. I think we could. I would love to do one.
Okay. All right. That's amazing. Yeah. Maybe let's talk about that for 2023. when we start doing this. All right. We got some time left. I'm going to try to go through mine really, really fast. I did not get that memo from Jessica and Jesse to do a very morbid example. So mine is much more low key and low stakes. Mine is not necessarily nonprofit related, but I'm just going to give you guys a peek behind the curtain of like how we did registrations for Boba Force at Trailhead DX. So I'm going to share my screen. And again, I'm going to try to go through this fairly quickly. So here's my, there it is. Can everyone see that? Yeah, sorry, I need a audio. I can't see your videos anymore.
I can see
it. See the screen? Okay, cool. So we went through ShareT, and this is their catering page. They were like, add in your orders, and we had like, I don't know, a few. We had about, how many orders did we have? We had 54 orders. And so I was not about to go into each one of these or make my co-leader and our people go into each one of these and like select everything and then add to a cart, right? And then basically pay at the end. So what we did was we contacted the owner and I was like, hey, if I send you something like this with everything, like, can you just make it? And they were like, cool. Also, this was the most organized report they'd ever seen. So I was like, great. So how we did this really is that you really only need a couple things. You need one screen flow and you need Experience Builder, or they used to call it like Community Cloud or whatever they're calling it now. But on the page, literally, it's just a drag and drop of the flow component of the screen flow. And so you can't see it here because this is in preview mode. But in the actual flow, what you do is, well, first you had to put in a password to get through, because we had to shut down the page after registration closed so that we didn't get more orders coming in. And then you filled out your information and you literally just like went through and like selected your stuff. And based on whatever you selected, it mimicked whatever was happening on this site, right? So whether it was a fruit tea or a milk tea or whatever these categories are, that's what you selected. And then you could select your flavors, and then the sweetness level, the ice level, and then your multiple toppings and everything. And so behind the scenes, this is all literally just one object with a whole bunch of custom fields, as you can see here, right? Oh, you guys probably shouldn't be seeing this information. Oh, well. But you've got like the flavors and the categories and everything. And then so one question I got was like, well, if you broke out each of these categories, like how did you get this to show up so nicely on just like the main drink? And so basically, I created a formula field that said, bring in the value out of these 6 fields that's filled out. And the one that's filled out is the one that you put up here. That's all. Because otherwise, you'd have to like put all 6 of these on the report somehow, and then show that up, and that would look horrible. So we just wanted to do that. And literally on the flow side, it's just a very, very simple like screen flow and then the order form, which is exactly what you just saw here. A lot of this was just drag and drop of the fields anyways, because we just created it all there, and all that stuff there. And then we wanted to create a contact record so that we could just log it against, for future posterity, and then create the order record. And then we had to also then get the order record after we created it in order for it to plug into the email that we sent to someone saying like, here's your confirmation email. And at the end, this was your confirmation screen. This is your order number, the main drink, the level, the ice, toppings, blah, blah, blah. And that's it. Jesse asked, how does the password work? That one was a fun one to figure out. The password literally was, let's see here, validate input. No, where did I put it? I can't remember at the moment. I definitely remember saying like you had to put in something in order for you to get past it, and then I don't know where I put that functionality. I will follow up with you all on that one, or you guys can stay behind afterwards and I can try to figure this out. But this is what you would put if the password was invalid. Oh, there we go. That's how I did it. I said that the password has to equal the password constant. And if you look at your components, if your resources, where's password? Aha, password constant. So I just said, here's the password. It's a text field or a text constant. And then I just put in whatever password I felt like. And then on the validation screen right here, I just said, this is this is a validation rule. This is your message if it doesn't match. And here's the formula. I said the password has to equal this. And if not, then it shows that. That's it. I'll stop sharing. So that's a quick way. I think the good use case for this, even though this is like primarily Wilberforce, I think this is a quick way for like if you're at a nonprofit and let's say you're just trying to collect information from your members for like an event, for example, or for something similar, and they don't have access to Salesforce, right? This was primarily for people who don't have access to our Salesforce instance. This was built on the development org that Jessica and I maintain, which is also what powers that one-stop shop that she showed you at the beginning. So we had this requirement of like, people can't get in. We need them to just be like a random person off the street to like enter whatever they feel like. And then, we get that information and then we output into a report. We send it over to the vendor for the manager to create all the drinks. And then they labeled everything correctly and Trailforce, or not Trailforce, Wilberforce at Trailhead, I think went off pretty nicely. So that's it. Let's stop recording there. That'll be sort of like the end of our official session. And then we'll just open it up to whoever has